The Arizona frontier baked under a relentless sun as Emma Callahan trudged through the dust-choked yard of the Black Iron Ranch, her boots pounding a rhythm of weariness and stubborn grit that had defined her 5 years of service to the land and its unforgiving master, Clayton Briggs. The wooden fences creaked under the dry wind, the horses snorted impatiently, and the scent of warm hay mixed with the lingering tension that always hung around the ranch like a storm that refused to break. Emma tightened the bandana around her neck and wiped the sweat from her brow as she made her daily walk toward the back pens, where the ridge rose like a jagged beast of stone against the sky. She wasn't expecting anything unusual, just another day of hard labor, feeding animals, tending wounds, mending fences, and pretending she didn't hear the biting comments from the ranch hands who still didn't believe a woman belonged on a ranch. But then she noticed something, a flicker of movement near the rocky outcrop, a shadow where no shadow should have been. Her heartbeat quickened, instincts prickling like needles beneath her skin. Slowly, silently, she approached the ridge, each step cautious, each breath shallow. As she rounded the final boulder, she froze, her lungs locking tight. There, collapsed on the dusty earth, lay a wounded Apache warrior, breathing heavily, gripping his side, his chest rising in painful jerks. His hair was matted with sweat, his face pale beneath sun-darkened skin, and blood soaked the earth beneath him. Every story she had ever heard around the ranch fires, tales of raids, ambushes, and Apache warriors striking, like ghosts out of nowhere, spun through her mind, like loose reins caught in the wind. She should have run. She should have shouted for the men. That is what Briggs had drilled into every worker. You see one of them, you sound the alarm. We don't help Apaches. We protect our own. But as Emma stared down at the man before her, she didn't see an enemy or a monster from campfire tales. She saw a human being dying alone. With shaking hands, she knelt beside him, whispering softly, unsure if he spoke English but hoping her tone would reach him. His eyes flickered open, dark, glassy, filled with both pain and fierce pride, and for a moment, they studied her with the intensity of a man who had learned never to expect mercy. When he didn't attack, didn't even attempt to rise, she leaned closer and saw the gash along his ribs. Likely a bullet wound, still fresh and dangerously deep. He needed help now, or he wouldn't live past the hour. Fighting the lump in her throat, Emma tore fabric from her skirts, pressing it firmly to the wound even as he winced. "I'm not here to hurt you," she whispered again, though it felt more like a vow to herself than him. She dragged him into the shade, fetched water from the trough near the pens, cleaned the wound, and stitched it herself with trembling fingers that had mended more horses than people. Each second, stretched like wire pulled too tight. His breathing steadied barely, but enough to spark hope in her chest. As she finished binding the wound, the earth suddenly vibrated beneath her. Knees, hoofbeats, loud, fast, many. Emma's blood ran cold. Slowly she turned, dust swirling in the golden air as Clayton Briggs rode up atop his magnificent stallion, hatred already burning in his eyes. 3 ranch hands followed close behind, rifles raised, forming a wall of accusation in the blazing sunlight. "What in God's name are you doing, Emma?" Briggs bellowed, his voice cracking like a whip across the silence. She stood in front of the wounded Apache instinctively, shielding him with her body. Her voice trembled but didn't break as she answered, "He was dying. I couldn't leave him." The ranch hands muttered curses. Briggs' face twisted in disgust. "Couldn't leave him? He'd leave you to rot," he roared. "Helping the enemy? After all I've done for you? After feeding you? Giving you a roof?" Emma's jaw clenched. She had never asked for his charity. She'd earned her keep with hard labor and calloused hands. But the truth didn't matter. Not to a man like him. "Move aside," Briggs ordered, leveling his rifle. "We put him down now." Emma's heart pounded. "You shoot him, you shoot me," she replied without hesitation, surprising even herself with the force behind her words. The ranch yard fell dead silent. Even the horses seemed to hold their breath. Briggs stared at her, his lip curling as if she were something foul stuck to his boot. Then he spat in the dirt. "You're fired," he snarled. "Get off my land, now!" Emma felt the words like a slap. but she refused to step aside. She gathered her scattered few belongings, slung her bag over her shoulder, and returned to the Apache. "I'm not leaving him," she said firmly, helping the wounded man to his feet. Briggs and the ranch hands watched, with a mix of fury and disbelief as Emma supported the warrior and slowly guided him down the path toward the open desert, her legs shaking but her resolve unbreakable. The ranch gates closed behind her with a metallic clang that echoed through the valley like a sentence being passed. The sun dipped lower, painting the world in deep orange and casting long shadows at their backs. Emma didn't know where she would go or how far she could carry him, but she knew she had chosen right, even if it cost her everything. She whispered encouragement to the Apache as his weight sagged heavily against her. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sagebrush and dust. Then, in the distance, a low thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from the earth. Hoofbeats, many, steady, strong, coming fast. Emma turned slowly as the horizon filled with silhouettes, dozens of riders, emerging like shadows from the dying light. At the front rode a towering man, adorned with eagle feathers and carrying the authority of a mountain in his posture, his eyes fixed immediately on the wounded warrior Emma supported. And then, with a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, the man spoke the words that would change her fate forever. "You saved my son." The desert wind grew still as the riders approached, their silhouettes sharp against the amber horizon, their horses kicking up spirals of dust that seemed to dance around them like spirits. Emma stood frozen, supporting the wounded Apache whose weight sagged heavier by the second. But her gaze locked on the imposing figure leading the charge, a man with a presence so powerful it seemed to command the very wind. His chest was marked with ochre paint, eagle feathers braided into his long hair, his dark eyes sharp as obsidian and filled with an intensity that made Emma instinctively straighten her spine. When he reined in his horse before her, the earth itself seemed to quiet. The warrior she had rescued looked up weakly, whispering something in his native tongue before losing consciousness again. The chief's attention flicked to his son's wound, then back to Emma, his expression shifting through disbelief, surprise, and something like respect. "You saved my blood," he rumbled, voice deep as distant thunder. Emma swallowed, heart pounding but unwavering. "I did what anyone should have done," she answered, though she knew that wasn't true, not around these parts, not under men like Clayton Briggs, who would rather spill blood than show mercy. The chief studied her with a stillness that felt ancient, the kind of silence that saw into a person's soul. "No," he said. "Most would have let him die." Behind him, the Apache riders dismounted swiftly, surrounding them with protective vigilance, their movements graceful yet alert, like hawks ready to strike if Emma made even the slightest wrong motion. But instead of fear, she felt an odd sense of safety, as though these strangers recognized something in her that her own people had overlooked. As they lifted the chief's son from her arms and placed him upon a horse padded with blankets, the chief motioned for Emma to follow. "Come!" he commanded. "You will not be left alone in the desert." Emma hesitated only a heartbeat. She had nowhere else to go, no home, no ranch to return to, nothing but the clothes on her. Back in the lingering sting of Briggs' hateful words, she followed the riders toward the mountains, their silhouettes stretching long across the earth as twilight settled, wrapping the desert in a violet haze. After an hour's ride, they reached a hidden Apache encampment nestled between towering red cliffs and whispering pines, lit with soft firelight and humming with murmurs of worry as the wounded warrior, whose name she learned was Taza, was carried into a healer's lodge. Women and elders approached Emma with cautious curiosity, some touching her sleeves, others studying her with solemn eyes. She expected fear or hostility. Instead, she found gratitude, silent but powerful. The chief led her to a fire circle, where he finally sat and motioned for her to do the same. Flames crackled between them, their glow painting his face in shifting amber. "My name is Nantan," he said, "chief of this band. Taza is my only son." Emma clasped her hands to still their trembling. "I didn't know," she whispered. Nantan nodded slowly. "But you acted as though you did." He leaned forward slightly. "Why?" "Your people shed our blood without hesitation." Emma stared into the fire. Because I've seen too much dying, too much hate. I wasn't raised to turn my back on someone who needed help. The chief considered this, his gaze heavy. Briggs will not forget what you did, he warned. He will call it betrayal. He will hunt you for shaming him. She knew that already. She had felt the promise of vengeance in Briggs's glare as she walked off his land. Let him hunt, she murmured, surprising herself with her own boldness. I'd make the same choice again. Nantan's stern expression softened, just barely like stone warming under the morning sun. You are brave, he said. Or foolish. Maybe both, Emma admitted. They sat in thoughtful silence until a messenger rushed from the healer's lodge to announce that Taza would live. A wave of relief washed over the camp, and Emma felt her chest loosen, for the first time since she'd found him bleeding in the dust. But the night was not finished with her yet. Across the darkening valley, distant shouts echoed, angry, unmistakable, and drawing closer. The Apache riders stiffened, hands instinctively going to their weapons. Emma's pulse surged as torches flickered in the distance, carried by men on horseback, Briggs' men. He had not waited long. The chief rose, towering and calm, as if this confrontation had been inevitable. Stay behind me, he commanded Emma. And though she wanted to stand on her own, something in his voice made her obey. Moments later, Clayton Briggs rode into the clearing with half a dozen armed men at his back, his face red with rage. His glare locked on Emma like he had finally found the prey he wanted to tear apart. There you are, you ungrateful traitor, he roared. I knew the savages would drag you off. Hand her over. Nantan stepped forward, raising a hand with regal authority. This woman saved my son, he declared. She is under my protection, Briggs sneered. She's my worker, and she helped your kind. That makes her mine to punish. The chief's eyes hardened like steel. She belongs to no man. Briggs reached for his rifle. The Apache riders moved like lightning, arrows drawn, spears lifted, surrounding Emma in a shield of unwavering loyalty. For the first time, Briggs' bravado cracked as he realized he had ridden straight into a force far beyond his control. Nantan's voice boomed across the clearing. Leave now, or your blood will stain this ground before dawn. The standoff stretched like a drawn bowstring until Briggs finally spat a curse, turned sharply, and galloped off with his men, vowing revenge. The chief watched them disappear before turning to Emma. Your old life is gone, he said, but a new one can begin if you choose. Emma stared at the firelit camp, the people who had accepted her, and the horizon where Briggs' torches vanished into darkness. For the first time, she felt the faint stirrings of belonging, not forced, not bought, but earned. And as she breathed in the warm night air, she knew she had crossed a threshold she could never return from. She had chosen compassion over fear, and that choice had changed her fate forever. Then, as the stars brightened overhead, Nantan spoke again. Tomorrow you will stand before our council, Emma Callahan. They will decide your place among us, she swallowed, nerves and hope warring inside her. And if they accept me? Nantan offered a rare smile. Then you will never stand alone again.